Hello and welcome back to Teach Talk with the Fine Arts. My name is Sarah and I'm your host. Today I have Martina Vasil. She is a professor at the University of Kentucky. We talked about different music education methods that she uses and that I hadn't really heard of before because I'm not a music education emphasis. We talked about Orff and Dalcroze. She also talks about the transition that she had to make when COVID first hit. I hope you guys enjoy the episode, and without further ado, let's get into it.
Hi, everyone. I am Martina Vasil. I am an assistant professor of music education at the University of Kentucky. I also teach children 1 day a week at Lexington Montessori School. So I have preschool through 6th grade. I see them Monday mornings. I'm division coordinator for the music ed music therapy department. So I have some administrative stuff I do. And I also run a summer program for teachers. And we do modern band training, Orff training, and Dalcroze training.
Awesome. So, would you consider yourself tech savvy?
I think I am. I kind of grew up in the generation that was between Gen X and millennials. I'm technically a millennial, but I'm an old millennial. And so I somewhat grew up with technology, so a lot of it's really intuitive for me. And I can see, when I help my mom with stuff, that some things that I just know where they are, she doesn't. So I think a lot of it comes naturally. And I actually took the summer to work on Google One certification. I still have to take the test, but I did all the training. And it was kind of fun. There are some things I already knew, but then I learned a lot of new tools. So I kind of enjoy when I have the time to knock things out and try to figure out new things. And then once you got it, you can be really quick with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely have never been pushed this far to figure stuff out because of COVID. So it definitely motivated me to dig a little deeper in it. I'm sure you've had to explore some new things too.
Oh, yeah. Did you ever teach music online before COVID?
Kind of. So since I teach undergrad and grad students, I had already been teaching a graduate course, but it's not really active music making. It's like a research class in music education. That was always online. So I've been teaching that for 5 years now. Yeah. So, but no, I've never done teaching children music online before, or I teach a general music methods course. So that was hybrid, and I had to kind of do that online a little bit. So that was brand new as well.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Did you ever take any classes online, like learning music online before COVID?
Actually, yes. At the University of Kentucky, we have Dalcroze courses online. And when I got hired here, becoming director of the program, I thought it would be important to actually take the class so I understand how to advise students. So 2016, I took online Dalcroze. And for those of you who don't know what Dalcroze is, it's a movement-based approach to music education. And the idea is embodying musicality, and that should translate then into whatever performance medium you use. There are 3 branches to Dalcroze. So there's eurythmics, which is the physical movement part. There's solfege. They use the fixed do system, which kind of makes my brain explode. And then there's there's improvisation, plastique anime. So it's the idea of taking all the movement knowledge you've gathered over time, and if you listen to a piece of music, you're able to show the musical elements in your body. So you'll see videos of plastique anime that people have a pre-recorded piece of music and they've kind of choreographed it, but it's not, like the Rockettes. It's actually when you watch the dancers, you're like, oh, I see that they're showing the bass line and I see that they're showing the melodic line, and I'm seeing this person showing the harmonic changes. So, how do you do that online? So the class I took, it focused a lot on the piano improvisation part, because the role of the Dalcroze teacher is to almost have a improvisational conversation with students. So you're at the piano and you're making up music for them to move to. But maybe if you see a student, taking a more lively step, you change your piano music to match them, and it's very much in the moment and responsive. So I had to videotape myself playing piano, doing exercises. And the class also had a great lesson plan. So like play on the piano or accompany yourself telling us a children's story that you'd have like kindergartners act to. So you could tell like the story of the three little pigs and have like little motifs on the piano. And I had to record myself doing that and then upload it. So I learned a lot that semester. I think it actually worked out pretty well. And then I ended up taking part 2 of that class one summer and part 3. So I've done 3 online Dalcroze courses that I would say, actually does involve some music making.
Okay. I actually didn't know what that was either. Because I was reading your bio and I was like, huh. So that's interesting.
It's one of the approaches that most people don't know about, but what's interesting is that it's been in the United States the longest. Mm-hmm. I think what's made it not as well known is that the training can be pretty expensive. It's pretty hard to get certified to become like a teacher of the approach. There's 2 American societies for it now, but before that, your only option was to go to Europe, and you'd have to study for a year.
Oh, wow.
to get like a diploma. So then some American versions of it cropped up, and they're trying to make it more accessible. But I think it's definitely, when you think of like, Gordon music learning theory or Suzuki and Orff and Kodai, less people tend to know about Dalcroze, but I find it very valuable and it's very interesting, and it's really challenged my musicianship. But that was combining the online classes with actual summer training and physically being on campus, So we had to cancel everything last summer, which was a big bummer.
Yeah. How did you get into that? Like, what made you start to want to learn that?
So before teaching at a university, I taught children music in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, mm-hmm. and actually went to West Virginia University. So
that's cool. I
have 2 degrees from WVU. So I've lived 7 years in West Virginia, and I loved it. It's a beautiful state.
It is.
And I know you teach there.
Mm-hmm.
So as a general music teacher, when you get your music ed degree, usually the general methods class will cover them. And that's when I first heard of Dalcroze and just knew like a little bit about it. And then when I started teaching, in Pennsylvania, you have to do continuing education. I think that's every state. And there are a lot of Orff workshops nearby. And I heard about Dalcroze training at the local university, but it was like $2,000 to go for a week, and I just couldn't afford it. So it's always been kind of on the back burner that I wanted to learn more about it. Yeah. I love to dance and I love to move. So I thought, oh, this would be natural for me. But it wasn't until actually like getting the job here and having that opportunity right in front of me that I could actually do the training. They offer discounts for classes for faculty. So I think it cost me like $65 to take the class instead of thousands.
Right. That's cool. Did you ever this is before COVID, did you ever use any recording devices? Did you ever do any recording? And then did that help you transition to online learning?
Oh, I see. I guess taking the Dalcroze class did, because I was somewhat familiar with uploading to YouTube mm-hmm. and working with like iMovie. What I'd never done before is I had to create digital lessons for my Montessori students. Oh. And I think every single music teacher on the planet was scrambling to do that. And what's funny now is that, as we're kind of alternating between in-person online, that's happening with my Montessori school, kind of like you. Mm-hmm. I'm actually finding a lot of pre-made materials now, which makes life a little easier. A lot of people have made like body percussion play-alongs or cool. like listening maps on YouTube, so I can kind of put a lesson together and be like, and you can also watch this if you want to explore body percussion. There's more options for my students to make music at home. So yeah, I mean, I didn't I know some of my colleagues that totally spent all this money on like new microphones and new lighting, and I just bought myself a ring light. The audio was like good enough. I live alone, so my house is quiet. I don't need like fancy
Right.
soundproof equipment or fancy microphones. And I know how stressed I get, so I was trying to just like work from what I knew and maybe add one new thing.
Hmm.
So like for me, all the Google stuff was my one new thing. So I ended up like designing a Google Classroom for my Montessori school, and I booked a consulting time with a Google trainer, and then gave me some ideas. And so like my website is set, and I was like, that's my one new thing. I'll continue to use iMovie. I'll continue to link to YouTube because that's what I know. So I guess that's kind of the extent of the technology and software that I used.
Hmm. I feel like that's good though, because if you add a lot of stuff, then the students start getting overwhelmed too, because they have all these different things to look at. So, I mean, I've been overwhelmed with all this stuff they've thrown at us, but I've just learned that it's good to just keep it simple because
I
they
agree.
appreciate that too.
Yes, as few clicks as possible, and trying to have like one link that they go to and they can easily see where to go
Hmm.
from there. Yeah, even with my college students, we use Canvas at the
Hmm.
University of Kentucky. I actually spent all summer reformatting my general music methods course. It's the most intense class because they have to practice teaching, and for most of them, it's their only class on how to teach kids music. They get one semester of it basically. And I wanted to make it very easy, and I kind of redesigned it into modules. I actually took a lot of ideas from the Google training. The Google training would always be like, module one, this will take you about an hour. And I was like, oh, I have an hour today. So then for my
Yeah.
college students, I'm like, here's your homework. It should take you 30 minutes. Um, and like quizzes, they can take them as many times as they want because Google let you do that. And I was like, that actually helped me learn, because if I messed up one thing, I could just like go back, think about it, and fix it. And then it's less stressful. It's less high stakes. So I think that really helped my students too. It was kind of like a course redesign online for them.
Yeah.
The university had to install new tech for us, though. My classroom had to get, well, obviously a camera in to record. And so I taught simultaneously 10 people online and 10 in person because my room was too small. And then we would switch. So I'm teaching two groups of people at the same time. And so we had to have a camera on myself, and be able to we had to put floor mics to pick up other students in the class. And I had to wear a lapel so that people on Zoom could hear me.
Oh, wow.
So I would say like our college tech guy was working like 80-hour weeks trying to get everybody
Yeah.
set up. And I really appreciate that we had him.
That's kind of what we're doing now, except, yeah, it's just one camera on me and like it's my webcam. And so, like, I have these kids on Zoom and then there's some in the class, and it's difficult to like teach a class like that and make sure everybody's like involved. And I'm still trying to figure out how to do it and like, yeah, get the information across.
Yeah, I will say that something that kept my sanity for that kind of hybrid class was I relied heavily on Google Slides.
Hmm.
Um, because what I really liked about it is I could share it with the students. They can follow even on their phone if they wanted to, if they were on Zoom. And I would embed links and virtual instruments on there. So like
Okay.
if we were doing a lesson on teaching children composition, I'd have like a link to, my favorite website is MIT Scratch, because you can search by whatever you want and it's highly responsive to the mouse pad. There's no delay. So I'd have like a virtual xylophone,
Well,
and they
that's
could like
awesome.
tap out a melody or use numbers to make a melody. Or one day we had like a virtual percussion room, and so they could like hit a triangle or a tubano or like rhythm sticks and basically join what my in-person students were doing. I couldn't hear
Yeah.
them, but they could listen and kind of play at home.
Hmm.
So that was really nice. And then they'd always have the Google slide to go back to if they wanted to review or play with anything that we talked about.
Right.
Um, and it kept me organized too, because I would just like, you have a million things on your mind as a teacher and trying to remember everything. And if I just put on the slide, I'd remember to get to it, and I could like link homework assignments to it or surveys for them to fill out. And yay, Google.
Yeah, we use Google for pretty much everything now, and it is super helpful. So, walk me through when COVID first hit. Like, what was the process with the university and the school you teach at?
Um, so university at first, I believe we were just told we would be 2 weeks online, and then we would try to come back in person. I'm a very planning kind of person, so I immediately just wanted to like kind of get a revised calendar in order for students and try to shuffle things to make sure that we can get to the most important tasks
Hmm.
before the end of the semester. And then I communicated with them immediately. Just be like, hey, don't worry about this and this. I'm working on a calendar, and try to get it to them as soon as possible so they knew what was going on. And then when it all got completely canceled, I think it was probably within just a few more days or the following week, then the university was, I think, trying to make the decision about like sending everybody home, providing support for the professors. We have actually a really wonderful, I guess it's a group, it's a Center for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning, or Learning and Teaching, CELT. And their whole job is to support teaching in the university. And they were available for like open office hours if people needed help with tech and stuff like that. When that news came in that we were not returning at all, I had a planning meeting with my undergrad students to kind of talk about how they wanted to proceed, because they were all just lives turned upside down. Some of them sent back home, some of them staying in their apartments. And we just decided on I think 3 more synchronous classes together, and we reduced the project load, and we decided to keep certain things and to adapt other things. So I definitely planned with my students how to end the school year.
Yeah.
And I think that helped them succeed. My grad students, I only had probably 4 or 5 of them, and we were already meeting on Zoom actually once a week. So nothing changed, and we just kind of proceeded as usual. I mean, I gave maybe just some homework extensions for some that were overwhelmed with because some of them taught full time as music
Hmm.
teachers. So that was like weirdly normal with the grad students. It didn't change. I'm very grateful to be at the University of Kentucky. They gave the professors a lot of autonomy. They didn't make us come to campus to teach. They're like, if you need to stay home and you have good internet connection, teach from home. They're not, policing us on that. And I've just heard horror stories from other colleagues that they're like being forced to come in like every single day of the week. And it's just not necessary. It's like, trust us to do our job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know, I see that in K-12 too, that some teachers are being forced to go to the elementary school to teach. And it's like, if they need the instruments, fine, but otherwise, why?
Hmm.
If you got good internet at home, like let them do it from home. You don't know what their responsibilities are at home. Maybe they need to be at home to take care of
Yeah.
their own kids or whatever.
Yeah. That's really true. That's a good point.
So, yeah. And then even for this coming year, the university left it up to us. Do you want to teach hybrid? Do you want to teach in person? And, I'm in music. So of course, for ensembles, our ensemble directors wanted to be in person as much as possible. That was safe. And the university worked with them, and we made it. I thought for sure, honestly, that we'd shut down like week 4. It's just some massive, outbreak. But our students really impressed me. And for the most part, they were really responsible. And we didn't have any major outbreaks at Kentucky with the college students.
That's good.
Yeah. And we made it. It's finals week now. Like, wow.
I was expecting to hear about that a lot too, like all these colleges closing down from outbreaks, but no. There was a couple, but not what I was expecting.
Yeah. And honestly, it's been kind of nice to, be able to say, hey, today we're just going to do all online because we're mostly discussing. There's not a need to come into person, and I had complete freedom to do that. So like when I teach like a recorder lesson, this is not, we can't be in person for this. It spreads too much air.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, Tuesday's recorder day. Let's all meet on Zoom. And it's super weird because I'm like, repeat after me, and I play something and I can't hear them because they stay on mute.
Yeah.
But, it was fine. We had an hour, 15-minute college lesson on using recorder in the classroom, and they sent me videos later for an assignment, playing it, and I could assess them and see how they were learning. So I don't know, moving forward, if my classroom's already set up like this, I wouldn't mind kind of keeping part of this even after COVID. If there's a day where we're just discussing, what's the point of going all the way to campus if we can just stay at home and talk on Zoom?
I feel like a lot of music education in general is just going to go that way. More online stuff, more hybrid stuff instead of you have to be there. So that's a good change, I think. Because like you were saying, it's not always necessary to be in person.
Yeah, and it's been really cool to, in terms of like professional development, all the online workshops, not having to drive out for conferences. I mean, I really miss conferences. I miss being there in person, but I think post-COVID, having a blend of it would be kind of nice to have the option of like, okay, this workshop's going to be a virtual one, and then next month we'll have this in person. In a way, it's kind of, I don't know if I can say like democratized the ability to go to conferences. A lot of groups made them for free. Like I went to a Dalcroze one. It was run by the American Eurythmic Society, and they had a full day free workshop. And you'd think that would be hard because it's all about like the piano playing and movement, but they organized it so nicely that there was like a keynote, and then they had mostly like pre-recorded sessions. So one was like a Dalcroze teacher with her own kids, like demonstrating stuff, and you as the participant could like walk around in your space at home if you wanted to do what the child was doing in the video and following the piano prompts. So that was pretty cool. And there's another kind of pre-recorded where the teacher was talking about piano improv and like talking through different ways of doing it. And if you had a piano, you could like bring your laptop next to it and maybe play around with the instructor. But it was free, and I just kept thinking like, wow, how many new people have jumped in on this because they didn't have to travel anywhere. They didn't even have to pay for it. It like exposed them to Dalcroze that nobody knows about.
Right. I mean, like, I love PASIC and going to PASIC, but just the fact that, you didn't have to travel just made it easier. And like you said, it probably opened up doors to people that never went or couldn't go.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So we're going to go ahead and go to like post-COVID, whenever that may be.
Okay.
What do you think the future of music education will look like?
Well, I think a lot more music teachers are just going to be more comfortable using online tools because COVID forced it. It's so funny to me because like any kind of research study I see or survey I see, it's always like, oh, but I'm not that comfortable using technology. Or even like with our student teachers, we always do a end of the semester reflection, and the tech part is usually pretty low or maybe in the middle. And I'm like, And then once COVID hit, my poor student teachers had to finish out in their placement online, and all of a sudden their tech skills
Right.
were all the way up here. So I think just everyone's a little smarter on the tech side of things. So I think people will, keep the tools that work for them even when they go back in person, maybe like supplemental assignments at home,
Hmm.
using stuff online. I think everyone's going to be really excited to come back in person. I think there's going to be a resurgence of participation in in-person groups because people just miss being together.
Yeah.
I'm hoping the arts can survive this because there's lots of theater companies, symphonies, music halls that are closing down because I just heard on NPR, like, um, even for like some locally owned places, the Nutcracker performance is like 80% of their revenue and they can't run it this year. And without that, how can they even keep the doors open?
Yeah.
Um, so if we survive, I think there's going to be a great revival of the arts and music groups in person. I guess whoever's left over, but yeah, I don't think it'll change too much beyond maybe teachers will use a little bit more tech. I think people honestly just miss being in person. I saw it with my own college students. I mean, the amount of motivation and buy-in they had this semester, like they wanted to be on campus. They hated
Hmm.
how the spring semester turned out. They wanted to be back so bad. And I think that's why behavior was so good with the mask wearing and the hand washing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I think like PD stuff, professional development's changed forever. I know for my summer program, we had to cancel everything because it's all in person. And I had to kind of rethink and offer some like 10-day online courses instead. And we got people from all over the place. Like it was a further reach than before. I'd love to keep that kind of programming in
Hmm.
because some people just can't take 10 days away from their family to do Orff training or Dalcroze training, but they can log in for an hour a day for 10 days and do some professional development. So I think maybe in terms of like music organizations and higher ed offering continuing education, I think that's going to be changed forever. Like just continuing the virtual stuff alongside in person. I can't wait for it to be the future. When's that going to happen? When's COVID going to be over?
Uh, hard to tell.
I know. We just got to wait out the rest of the school year and hope that next fall is a little bit better.
I'm. What is Orff?
Sorry. Yes. So Orff is another approach to music making, and the central philosophy of it is letting people become their own composers, and creativity is at the core of it. So you might have heard of Carmina Burana. It's kind of like in any kind of horror movie, you hear like this da 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 da. And Carl Orff wrote that, and that's kind of what he's mostly known for. But he also worked with Gonald Capeman, one of his students, to develop this approach to music education. Um, there's a whole long history behind it, but basically they worked with adult adult dancers first, women at a dance school in Germany, and Orff was hired as the music teacher. And the founder of the dance school was like, "Do whatever you want, but we want to do music and movement." And he tried all this like cool experimental stuff, like the dancers also made music as they danced, and it was like very avant-garde. It was like during this whole modern dance movement in the 20s and 30s in Europe. And they also started composing music, and he designed instruments for them to use. So he was inspired by like wooden xylophones from Africa and the metal instruments from Indonesia, and he designed instruments that the bars could come off of it because that helped the dancers. They could remove bars to make it sound good, so they could put it like in a 5-note pentatonic scale, and there wouldn't be any half steps in there, so nothing would sound wrong, or they could put it in like a church mode and make it sound a different way. And this became really popular. I think he even brought his group to play for one of the Olympic Games. And after World War II, that school unfortunately got destroyed in the war, but some recordings survived. And this radio station was like, wow, we heard this amazing music you made with these adults. Could you adapt this for children? And Orff was like, sure, like, what else am I doing? And he asked his student, Gunald Cateman, can you help me do this with children? And they did it, and they did all these recordings with kids playing xylophone and like using nursery rhymes and children's songs. And basically it was like encouraging the kids to make up their own music using very simple musical forms. And that caught the attention of educational groups, obviously, and then it kind of grew from there. So if you ever meet an elementary music teacher, it tends to end up with the elementary, but I think the idea behind Orff can work in any setting. I mean, it was developed with adults first, right?
Right.
So what I love about it is that the main process behind it is imitate, explore, create. Okay. So let's say I want kids to play something on recorder. They'll imitate me first. I might teach them a few patterns on the recorder. And let's say I teach them like B, A, G. I say, okay, let's explore now. Can you mix up those notes in a different way? What if we did G, B, A? Can you find a different way to do it? And at that point, we've moved to creation for the kids using something very, very simple. And that whole process is used in all different ways, with speech, with movement, with the xylophones, with like percussion instruments. So it's a very creativity-centered approach and a collaborative approach to making music. Yeah, if you get a chance today, if you just Google like Orff group, Orff ensemble, you'll find a bunch of videos of kids playing music like on recorder and xylophones and stuff like that.
That's super cool. I hadn't heard of that. So yeah, I actually didn't go for music education. So I don't feel like, I think I missed out on a lot of the different ideas like Orff, and so that's kind of why I like this podcast, because I get to talk to people that knows more about that stuff, and then other people that don't know about that stuff can also learn about that stuff. So
yeah, that's it seems like to be the general music little secrets here. We got our little pedagogical secrets.
Yeah.
For the stuff that we talk about. Yeah, I highly recommend anyone who's interested in creativity and collaboration. I've had some non-music teachers take the Orff course, because you don't really have to know how to read music in order to do it, to
right.
teach that approach. I mean, the training does do a little bit with recorder, and there's some music reading, but I found like for adults, it's really not that hard to figure out how to read music. You already know how to read text, and reading music is just like it's another way of decoding information.
Right.
You know, adults can learn music notation really, really quickly. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'd be so curious if there's any non-music teachers who would like do that training and then take it into their classroom. Like, could you use it in a science classroom? Imitate, explore, create. I'm sure the process, the basic ideas of it could be applied in different subject areas, you know. Actually, I think I did find a video on kind of the ideas behind Dalcroze, that like embodiment of music. I did see this video. I think it was called like Dance Your Thesis or Dance Your Dissertation.
Oh, that's
And there
cool.
was like a physics professor who was having students like embody the ideas of physics and like show how just different physics concepts works in motion by using their bodies. Isn't that cool? That kind of made me think of Dalcroze in that way. That's normal. I think any kind of performance-based, they don't really talk about pedagogy. They're trying to get your performance skills. So I think that's pretty normal that you didn't hear about these. But yeah, spread the word.
I will.
There's a third one too. There's a Kodai approach, which that one, I mean, all three of them overlap in certain ways, but the Kodai tends to be focus on music literacy, like teaching children how to read music, and it centers the voice. Like singing is considered the foundation of all musicianship, so it's focusing on getting children to use their voices first, and they learn a lot of songs, and they use Kerwin hand signs. I don't know in your performance degree in theory if you ever talked about like, you know, the do, re, mi, fa, so, la, ti, do, but there's actually hand signs that go with it. And Kodai helps children, you know, singing using lots of folk songs and like identifying patterns in music. So can you hear the mi, re, do in a song? Can you show that in your hands using the hand signs? Can you now play it on a xylophone? Can you play it on your recorder? So it's also a very like activity-based, active approach to making music, doing music, dancing to music, singing to music, playing it. But there's a lot more focus on like notation and literacy. Those are kind of like the three foundational approaches that most music ed folks will talk about: Dalcroze, Orff, and Kodai. And then you'll get kind of string teachers tend to look at Suzuki, and band teachers tend to do more like music learning theory, especially in certain regions of the United States where that's more popular. So I won't get into all of them today, but it's a whole can of worms. And the new one that's coming out, well, it's most people just say like modern band, but that's not the name of the approach. That's the name of the class. So more schools today are doing more with like pop instruments. So modern band ensembles tend to include like vocals, drum set, electric guitar, acoustic guitar, electric bass, and basically starting with music that children prefer. So pop music, but it could be like older pop music depending on what you know, and like teaching them how to, you know, play a beat and like write a rap and write a song and like cover "We Will Rock You" by Queen.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, so that's my big passion, using pop music in the classroom. So that's been kind of like a newer wave in music, in the music ed world in the past 10 years.
That's all I have. Do you have anything that you'd like to add?
No, but thank you this is the first time anything's come out of LinkedIn, so you surprised me. It's very nice to meet you, and yay, West Virginia, and
Yay.
Good luck with the rest of your school year.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for being on.
You're welcome.
And that is it for today's episode. Thank you, Martina, for being on, and thank you all for listening. I will see you next time on another episode of Tea Talk with the Fine Arts.